Schoolhouse here on Sundays instead of Saturdays, so here we are. And, anyway, I'm Curtis. A few familiar faces here. I was elected in 2024, and in the Republican primary, and then went on to the general election. I got over 3,000 votes in the general election. Off I went to the helmet for the 25th 2025 legislative session. So Montana's legislature meets every 2 years. The deal is the 25 session last year, but I'm in a 2-year term, so I'm 1 year and 4 months into my first term, and now I have to run again if I want to go to the 27th session. The reason I'm running again is I've figured out a little bit more of what you have to do. I mean, you think you know everything about politics, what you got in mind, and what your party's doing. But when you go in there as a freshman, you don't get on the committees that you want. Every legislator gets assigned committees, whether Health and Human Services, or Transportation, or Fish and Game, Department of Natural Resources. You could write down your choices. My choices were fishing game. I shot my first elk just up over the hill here towards Thompson Falls in 1968, right here in Montana, when I was a kid. So I thought, well, I can hunt and fish in Montana. I know the laws. When I first bought my first elk license was $3.
That's what it used to be when I was 2.
So, well, maybe I could be on the Fish and Game Committee. That was my first choice. And I worked in the woods all these years, for over 55 years, right in Young County. So, Department of Natural Resources. I know the woods, I know logging, I know how the DNRC works, Forest Service, Natural Resources Committee. No, I didn't. So that was my second choice. And the third one was transportation, because after I retired from the woods, I worked up here several years for the highway department on the Lookout Pass crew for 3 years. So I know the Department of Transportation, what they do and how much money they spend and stuff like that. So those were my trips. I did get on the transportation committee, and then the other one was state admin and veterans affairs, and then the local government committee. The local government committee was pretty good too, because it dealt with all the county governments, and the legislator had a say over statewide rules that county governments operate under. So, but a lot of that too doesn't, in Montana we have the big 7 cities: Kalispell, Billings, Butte, Helena, Great Falls, Bozeman. So Gallup County, Missoula County, that's where all the trouble, all the growth and the high cost of living and the higher taxes are all in the cities, and all the zoning fights. So a lot of that committee was dedicated to that. I'm like, well, rural Montana is different. That's why we live in rural Montana, because we don't have all those rules and regulations, and that's kind of the way we like to keep it. So that was my session last year. And again, as a freshman, that first month, you're just drinking out of a fire hose on what you're supposed to do with the process and voting committees. So now I know. Now I know what I don't know. And I know I'll be a more effective legislator this time around. You see a lot of the experienced legislators are in their third. In the House, you can serve 4 terms, 4 2-year terms, and then there's term limits. So a lot of the legislators were in their 3rd and 4th term, that they were all committee heads, and they all run on the committees they wanted, and you basically had to work with them. So in your 2nd term, I'll be a lot more effective to represent our area. That's the biggest reason I'm running again. I was a little naive. I'm a Republican. Never voted Republican for my whole life. But the raw politics of I was a little naive about all that, especially the Republican Party. I mean, sometimes you think, we don't even need Democrats. We got each other to fight with. Some of that was a little distracting. So now I know that deal too a lot better than I did last year. But anyway, I hand out a couple little things. These are my door hangers. When I go door to door, I talk to people. And in 2024, when I was running, if you guys have lived around here that long, you know how the property taxes went up in from 2020 to 24, it starts with the appraisal. The Department of Revenue does a reappraisal. Those appraisals went up 60% in 4 years, from 2020 to 2024. So I made it my goal in 24, before I got to the legislature, to learn everything I could about why that is and what can we do about it, and what's the legislature's plan on doing. So in 2024, the governor had a task force in the interim. Right now, we're in the interim. 24 was the interim last time. So they had a big committee that met, bipartisan, the Democrats, Republicans, appropriations chairs, figure out what we could do to lower residential property taxes was the biggest deal. So they came up with the Homestead Act. That's what we passed in 2024. We lowered residential, full-time residential property taxes by up to 40% in most places. And it depends on the value of your house. If your house is over 1.5 million, you might not get as much of a deduction. But the average right now has 580. It's a lot. It used to be 200. All of a sudden it went from 200 to 580 because somebody came in from out of state and bought the house next door to you for 3 times it was worse, and the Department of Revenue's equation means your house is worth that much all of a sudden, just like that. But the legislature's job in that whole formula is we get to set those rates, because all the different classifications of property taxes, residential, ag, timber, commercial, mining, centrally assessed, like the power lines, how much the power line pays, or the refineries, pipelines, they all have a different rate. And the residential part of that pie was carrying almost 70% of the entire revenue for the state, because our property taxes had gone up so high. So they came up with the Homestead Act, which would lower residential rates. But it wasn't a perfect plan because it shifted. So it shifted to the centrally assessed. They got a higher rate, but not any higher than they were back in 2021. They don't tell you that. So the power companies and the oil companies are mad about that bill because their rates did go down, but the residential did. The most vulnerable, to me, property tax is the worst, most unfair tax. Who decided to put a tax on a guy's house to start with? It was affecting the most vulnerable citizens of Montana, the young families with kids and the retired people. Like me, I'm 70 years old now. I retired with X amount of dollars. Now you think about it 30 years ago, well, if I have $1 million, I'll be able to retire. All of a sudden you get to that age with the inflation and taxes, you're like, wait a minute, I don't have near enough money. If they're taxing us out of our home, that's why we concentrate on residential property tax. My mother was 92 years old. They sell their house and move into town, into a little house. Couldn't afford to stay at home. It was happening all over the state. So that's why I supported and voted yes, and we did pass it. And the governor was on board with it. We knew the governor was going to sign it. We can pass any kind of legislation you want, but if the governor doesn't sign it, if he vetoes it, it's not going to become law. It's the first time we'd overhauled property taxes since 2009.
So does Homestead then, it's determined by how long they've been in the property?
No, just if you live there year-round. I think it's 7 months or more.
7 months?
Yeah. And then full-time rentals too, because that was another deal, that in the cities, the short-term rentals were driving up rents and availability. Like Missoula, all of a sudden VRBOs were so popular that the college kids can't even afford to rent a house in Missoula or Bozeman because of those VRBOs. So the full-time rentals did get the same thing as the homestead deduction, yeah. So that was the story behind that. And then other things that you'll see on my flyers that we passed for the first time in a long time, our public schools. To me, you know, I live in St. Regis, and I lived there for years. I went to high school back in 1971 there, 9 kids in my class. I think 6 of them were from the West End. 2 Moeller girls from Saltese, and Dwayne Simon was one of them. He just moved here. Doug Moeller moved here in 1971. But, and we run by the Montana Constitution. There's 2 things in the Montana Constitution that says, there's only 2 things in there that tells what the legislature must do. One of them is set the budget. We set a 2-year budget. Every 2 years, we set the budget going ahead. There's gotta be a balanced budget. It's a balanced budget amendment in there. And fund the schools. Article, I think it's section 10, article 1, Montana Constitution. The legislature shall fund a free, quality education for Montana children. So that's set in stone in our Constitution. I mean, I go to my favorite thing to do in February, in the middle of winter, is go to St. Regis and watch play basketball. And there's 5 high schools in my district. My district starts in Frenchtown, so it's Frenchtown, Alberton, Superior, St. Regis, and Plains. So my district goes right up through Paradise, right to the South Side Road, and then right to the edge of Plains. 5 high schools in my district, and they're all rural schools. So I've always supported, my goal is to keep supporting our public schools and our kids. I mean, our towns, our little schools are the heart and soul of our little towns. You can't, businesses like the sawmill, the Tricon Mill, when people move here to get a job, the first thing they look at, they've got kids, well, what's the school? Is the school any good? Can I raise my family here? Yes, you can. We've got really, really good schools. But they're always struggling with funding. I mean, Alberton right now, I helped them last winter. They're getting a grant, just a building grant. Their schoolhouse in Alberton built in 1911 or something. It's almost as old as this building right here. That main building in Alberton, they're still using it. So they got issues with plumbing, and I mean, they've been working on it all these years, upgrading rooms and this and that, but they had a heck of a time without passing a new levy that raised taxes some more. We worked with them and got them a historical grant through the Montana Historical Grant Program. Money comes from the coal severance tax, so they can put new windows in part of the school. Stuff like that. But Alberton's the same way. They're having a heck of a time. Every school's different. Frenchtown's the biggest school district in my area. They're having a heck of a time too with their building fund. So support the schools, and then this paragraph about. So we passed that STARS Act, which gave. It's been forever since. A lot of problems with our rural schools is get the teachers to come out here and stay. Hiring new teachers. We'll get a new teacher and they'll stay for a year, then off they go to another school district that pays more. So we passed that STARS Act, which was a starting teacher. I think we raised, it's like almost like a minimum wage bill for starting teachers. It went up to $47,000, I think, like that would help. But another part of that same bill was to add more money to vocational training, because we have to. Not every one of our kids is going to go to college. I mean, in the workforce in Montana is electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, welders. Those are the kids we need. So we raised the state's share in funding for school for vocational programs all the way down to junior high. Now junior high kids can take welding and
So they're trying to get shop class back in there.
Yeah.
But that's the best thing that ever happened to me in shop class.
And then another one that I get a lot of grief about was the protecting our rural clinics. And what that means is Montana renewed the Medicaid expansion that was part of the Affordable Care Act, and that's from 18 to 64. If you're 65 and you paid Social Security all your life, you can get Medicare, or you can get supplemental insurance. But if you're below 65, there's not much there. This came with the Affordable Care Act back in 2016 or 2012 is when Obama. First it was Obamacare. Of course, all of us Republicans like, oh, Obamacare, we don't want that. We're not going to pay that. We don't want socialized medicine. So it went that way in Montana for several years. But finally they figured out, as a Republican senator from Great Falls, the way that bed tax worked, the hospitals were already paying into this deal for 4 years in Montana, but not getting anything out of it because they hadn't signed. Each state had the option to sign up for it or not. So back in, I think, 2015, the legislature passed it. We had a Republican majority legislator and a Democrat governor. It was back Governor Bullock. And they fought tooth and nail to make it a conservative plan that use it. So we've had it in place since 2015, but it sunsetted in 2025. So our legislature last year had to renew it, vote on it to renew it. Of course, from the hard right, we heard, oh, it's Obamacare. But guess what? It survived 2 Trump terms. 2 Trump administrations did not change it. They didn't come up with anything better. We have work requirements. Each state gets to set their own rules the way they're going to use it. It's a 90-10 split. I'll take 90-10 any day. It's 90% federal money and 10%. It doesn't come out of the national debt. The system's set up where the hospitals pay back into it and it pays for itself. So our little Mineral County clinic, our little Mineral County hospital, and the Sanders County Hospital, they have benefited. So what it does, it provides that person that's not 64 the ability to get insurance and be able to go to the doctor before they get sick and go to the hospital. Emergency rooms. Before that, we have a lot of, if somebody comes into the emergency room and they're dying, you can't turn them away. But then they can't pay. So that affects the rest of us. So this really helped that. And now that hospitals are getting paid, and that was the whole idea behind that bill. So that's from the far right part of my party. You'll see quite a few of them that think that that's bad, but we worked it out in a conservative way to help Montana. We have a workforce that's healthier. A lot of our employers around the county, like Lincoln's or even Tricon Mill, are like entry-level people that 18, 19-year-old people that didn't have nothing, basically. They're coming to work. Either they're sick or they're not. If they're sick, they can't work. So we have all the data from the Department of Revenue on the myth that all these people that are on this are not working. That's not true. Most of them are working. So there's that. Those things that I have. I sponsored a bill. Of course, logging is my expertise. We have a DNRC bill that was my very first bill ever that I got to carry on the field. I don't know if you're familiar with selling logs. Say you got 10 acres and you want to cut some logs and make some money. You call the forester, like Angelo, one of those guys from used to be Tricon, now you can sell them to Thompson River, or IFG still buys farmer logs, I call it, private logs. Forester comes out, looks at your land, your logs. First thing he does, you have to contact the state. There's a state law, Montana, the Hazard Reduction Act. If I sell a log of private timber, you have to get an agreement with the state DNRC that says after I log it and sell it, I will clean up all the brush and get rid of it, burn it, grind it, whatever. And then the sawmill holds back money from you until the state guy has to come back out and look, say, okay, yeah, the brush is all cleaned up. Now you can get the rest of your money. So I never did. That thing went into effect back in 1980 something. I can remember my dad was a pretty good log contractor, and he was one of them really against it. He goes, what do you mean the state's going to tell us or hold money and then tell us what we can do on our own land? We fought it pretty hard. But then the sawmills bought into it because it also the thing, when they're selling lumber, there's a stamp that lumber gets that says it comes from a sustainable source, it's not stolen timber or whatever, from an illegal clear cut or something. It also did that for the sawmills. So the sawmills kind of bought into it. But I passed a new law last year. If you have a small timber sale, 2 loads or less, 2 loads logs is quite a bit. We have an exemption for private landowners, you don't have to do. So if you get, we've had these windstorms, sometimes fire kills trees on your adjoining land. Now you can cut and sell those logs to the mill, and you don't have to go through all that red tape of holding back money and do this contract. You still have to call the NRC, but you get an exemption for a year to do that project, and then next year you can do it again if you got another project. So that was my very first bill.
Well, that seems like a good thing.
It was a good thing. Anything we can do to reduce red tape and government regulation is a good thing for us. I mean, you own the land, you're paying property taxes on it, and they have to set the rules on what you can do with your own logs. But, so there was that one, and there were several others. I mean, we for the Republican Party, a lot of our efforts were for the judges, to make judges partisan or bipartisan. A couple of them got killed. We did pass one, and now we'll pass some good legislation. And the Supreme Court in Montana is the last leg the Democrats have. So we've got the majority, we've got the Democratic governor. The courts say, well, we'll just see about that. We passed it, the governor signed it into law, and the Supreme Court overthrows it. So to make the Supreme Court, and they are nonpartisan on the ballots. They always have been. So we want people to look at their ballot. They're new to Montana. They'll call me. I got a lot of calls. Like, which one of these judges is which? I mean, who? You have no idea. The fact is, a lot of them are just flat liberal, environmentalist type judges that vote against everything that we try to pass. So, I mean, just now, we passed a bill last year that was for the, what do they call them, the drag queens. Drag queen story hour. So that was a thing. So that drag queen could come in the DeBorgia Schoolhouse and set up chairs with kindergartners and sit there and read them books. They're doing public libraries. Our rule was, no, we don't think this is good. There's nothing good about that. So our law is no drag queen story hours in public places, period. That was it. It was simple. Everybody, we vote, all the Republicans, not one Democrat voted for it, by the way. They all voted no. But we passed it, governor signed it. Just last week, a district judge in Missoula threw it out, threw that bill out. They claimed it's First Amendment. They're violating the drag queen's free speech. Yeah, so that happens. So we've got a judge now. I got a campaign for him any day. He'll be on your ballot.
Are the judges here in Montana?
Yeah.
Are they voted in, or are they assigned?
They're voted in, Montana Supreme Court. So there's 2 of them up this year. It's a gal from Kalispell, and Dan Wilson's is our guy. I mean, he's a fair, he's just a by the book, constitutional judge. He's our guy. So there's been some talk you might have heard about me about not being conservative enough. I'm the chairman of the Middle County Republican Party. I've been voting Republican for over 50 years. On some things you can say I'm a moderate. I'll tell you, I'm a Ronald Reagan Republican. They have been for my whole life.
You know that your voting record came back 65%.
Which one?
From the GOP themselves, that you were not as conservative as.
You want to look at they want to look at a couple others. There's like 4 of them. Get on your phone and look up Legistats. That's what the Montana Freedom Caucus. Montana Freedom Caucus is one of the most conservative side of the Republican Party. Legistats. I got a 90.
I believe that is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, Legistats is a 90. And if you look to the right, it says extreme party loyalty. And the other one is Montana Free Press. I'll show you another one. There's one that's 88 maybe from the John Birch Society. I don't know if you know about them, but they're a little bit out there on some of their stuff. I got two uncles in Helena that were long-time John Birchers. They thought, back in the 50s, they proclaimed that Dwight Eisenhower was a communist spy. That was back in the day with the John Birch Society. But the word on the street that I'm not a conservative is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Our budget, I got some, there's, the Americans for Prosperity figured out our budget. Our budget increased by 0.7%. That's a 2-year budget, so it's less than 0.5% per year. This is from the Legislative Fiscal Division. These guys are the bookkeepers that we work with, the legislature, nonpartisan crew, full-time lawyers and accountants. That's who we work with to balance our budget. 0.7% growth. I mean, when it comes to revenue, you try to keep taxes down, but at the end of the day, spending matters. But the legislature doesn't really spend all the money. Your property taxes goes right back to the county government. So the county sets the mills, the county roads, the county sheriff's department, they're the ones spending the money. But they have rules too. They can't raise our mills any higher than 0.5% of inflation, which happened. You know, inflation took off pretty bad after that pandemic. So there was a little bit of an increase due to inflation, but the legislature, where our money, your income tax goes into that's another thing. We had an income tax deduction of $94 million. It's the first time they had lowered that state income tax too. Montana, without a sales tax, it's pretty tough to keep all that budgeted and keep, you know, there's a lot of, every time times gets tough in Montana, in my life, it's come up every 2 years, everybody, well, we need a sales tax. No, we don't need a sales tax. I'm not in favor of
that
sales
for
tax.
years.
The only way I would vote for sales tax if they completely abolish property tax. It'd just be another new tax. If you can get rid of one, then okay, but not another new tax. So, but yeah, spending matters. The Governor Jim Fortey's done a great job of cutting spending. I mean, all the departments, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Fish and Game, he gets to appoint the head of each one of those departments. So in their job his last term started in 22, whatever it was, he cleaned house in those departments with a conservative bunch of people. The OPI changed hands. The OPI is where all your school dollars go. So we've done as good as we can with the times but there's always work to be done. Now things are different. Things are different next year. Now gas is going up again all of a sudden. There's talk, I'm on the Transportation Interim Committee, and we're the ones that look after the GVW fees and the fuel tax. We haven't raised the fuel tax in Montana in 25 years. I think it's right 33 cents a gallon right now. Washington State's at 55 cents a gallon, I think, for gas tax. 75 for diesel, maybe.
Well, yeah, the diesel
Yeah.
is out the roof.
Right.
Jeez.
And that's where, our road department, we have our little state shop here in DeBorgia, and another one in St. Regis, Alberton, Frenchtown. Those guys, the maintenance crew, that's the only place they get money from is gas tax. But when the construction crew comes through here and redoes the bridge or, you know, that big job they just finished up by the rest area, those are fed money helps with those, but not the maintenance. Maintenance is all on the gas tax. So there's talk in our committee now, well, do we need to raise the gas tax or the GBW fees haven't been touched since the 90s. But I don't know almost. I think South Dakota, just a couple weeks ago, they put a moratorium. They stopped their gas. Gas started getting up to around $4 like it is today. They put a moratorium on their state gas tax. So gas automatically went down 35, 40 cents, whatever it is in South Dakota. We have a meeting next month. I'm gonna bring that up. Hey, how about we do that too? This summer, because this summertime, the gas even goes up more once the tourists start rolling. Around Memorial Day, that'd be a good time to do it. Give us a little break on our gas until we
That
can
would
figure it out.
actually work, you get more tourism because of it, so what you would get.
It's a good idea. I mean, they're still coming through. They're still spending more money in Montana.
Gas is cheaper.
So, any more questions I can answer? Did you find my Legistat score?
No, because our legislature is horrible about their website, but I do find your Freedom Index, which says 63% on your report card.
Who sent that? Who's that one?
I believe it's part of the same Freedom Caucus. It's called Freedom Index.
Yeah.
And they have their
I know for sure though, Juliet, the Freedom Caucus one is called Legistats. It's not LGMT.
but it's not easy
If I have
to
my
find.
phone, I can show it to you. It's 90.
But like I said-
It had a higher rating than the Speaker of the House, Steve Fitzpatrick. Had the same rating as the Republican Majority Leader, Brandon Lear. I voted Republican on everything.
So I have a question. There was a bill that you sponsored, am I mistaken on that, about hunting. What was that about?
I had a couple of them. One of them was, we scrapped it in committee. It was badly, because you go to if you got an idea for a bill, like say, so I wanted to improve our hunting harvest. So right now, when you kill an elk in Montana, you either go through a game check and then, or after next winter, the Fish and Game does random surveys. They call you, did you harvest elk in Montana? So in Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, they have mandatory harvest surveys. We have that for bears, mountain lion, moose, I think, special permits. So if you kill one of those, you have to call them in and tell them, yeah, I got it. So because the thing is, our area, we're in Unit 2 of Montana. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different areas of Montana. We're in Area 2. You know, we have a hunting district 200, 201, 202. And we don't have any game checks out here. The closest one, sometimes they do one down. They change all the rules and laws, like how many cow tags can you get. Everything's done by data that they collect on hunter harvest. But the fact is, in the last 15 years, they have no idea how many elk or deer are harvested. I can tell you just from living here my whole life, I drive to see a cow elk down here, you know, when they get hit between here and Cabin City on the freeway. There's one laying there right now. They're getting more elk killed there than we're harvesting. Since 1996, since the wolf reintroduction and the logging slowed down, our elk have taken a hit. We went from either sex permits for elk with a general tag back in the 70s to 500 cow tags, and it went down to 200 cow tags. Now this area, 200, 201, has got 5 cow tags. So then they'll have a big fishing game meeting, and they'll have charts. Hunter harvest, they have these numbers. And I'm like, where did you get that number? Oh, we have a formula for adjusting that number. They haven't got a clue. So if everybody that bought a hunting license, all you had to do was when you buy your hunting license this year, there'd be a question, did you kill an elk last year? And you're not under oath. You don't have to tell them where you hunted. That was a lot of it. You're noise, I'm not telling anybody where I hunted. It's nobody's business, That was that bit, but we scrapped it in committee. I went to the Fish and Game Committee and I talked to a bunch of them, and they're like, well, nobody likes it. So it didn't even leave committee. That was that one that you might have heard about that wasn't so great. But I thought it was a good idea. Just because I'm sticking up for our area. Central Montana, they've got overabundance of elk. But 90% of them are on private land. There's a reason why. And it's all because there's big money now for elk hunting. But our area, our elk are depleted, and they won't admit it. It's because of the wolves. We had up to 10 packs of wolves just in Mineral County. And they just flat. I've spent my whole life working in these woods up by up, and back towards Thompson, DeBorgia. I've been in every one of these hills for years and years and years. Of course, we knew where the elk were, and we knew how many elk there were, and we knew where to hunt, and we lived on that elk meat. This time of year, spring breakup, we get laid off for 6 weeks, but guess what? We got a freezer full of elk burger. That's what we're feeding our kids with. So it's always been important to me, our hunting and fishing in Montana. So to not be able to regulate the wolves, I don't know, that was a big deal. It just irks me that they make all these decisions on our area with no data, basically. Like, Montana's got plenty of elk. Well, not in our area. And that's my job as representative to represent my area. So that's why I came up with that.
Did you find out what House Bill 819 is about?
I remembered what it was. It was the another one, I think. I don't know if they threw that one out, but Missoula thumbed their nose
It
up.
passed.
Yeah, it passed. It was
We
Braxton.
receive
Braxton.
$5 million is going to be distributed amongst 19 counties, and Mineral County is the one in charge.
House Bill 819. What is it again?
Workforce housing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I thought it was the other one, the pride flag one. It was 18 something. That was another one we voted, because they're flying the pride flags at the Capitol.
Yeah, it seemed like I heard
Schools,
they voted the pride
classrooms in
flag in
Missoula,
Missoula's
flying the
flag.
pride flags in the classrooms. So we had, Braxton Mitchell had the bill to no political flags. We deemed it as a political statement, whatever. No pride flags on public property. Another one like the drag queen.
So what's the status of, so they said no protests, public protests on the Capitol grounds
They
on the
changed it.
weekend, and then they withdrew it for the No Kings. Is that going to stay that
I'm
way?
not sure, that's it.
Are you willing to fight for that? Because if you're gonna have that protest, you can't say, well, they get to have it and then we're gonna change it back.
Well, we have a lot, I mean, I think it was just a Saturday or Sunday thing, because the Capitol's wide open for all that, all the time. They just decided to do it on weekends, because the staff wasn't around. I mean, during the legislative session, you should see them all they have. They have they did the gays over there, and when they left the rotunda, because in the wintertime they're all inside. The rotunda's big, beautiful room, there's 3 stories opening. All their signs and their cups and the garbage is this deep after they left. So our Capitol staff has to go down and clean up. And when they're outside, they do the same thing. So that's why, because they didn't have any staff around on weekends to clean up their mess. That was the reason the governor said they wanted to shut it down on Saturdays. But that No Kings deal, that was just a few weeks ago. They threw a fit, because the governor made a new rule. No protests on weekends. Of course, that made them mad. So they changed their mind, and they let them have it. I don't get that No Kings thing.
Is that
I think No Kings Day is the 4th of July for me.
is that a temporary thing?
That's true.
Is that a temporary thing that they allowed that, or is that the rule that's gonna
I
say
think
that
they
you
just.
can't do it on the weekends?
Just rescinded, they can still do it, but then that costs the capital building fund crew more money to come in on weekends and clean up after, do it on.
Them permits should be holding them accountable for their own cleanup.
Right.
If you don't clean up and you have a rally, then your
Right.
organizers should be held accountable.
Right. No kings, it's just a big anti-Trump thing, I don't get it, really. I get pretty fired up about it. So what else can I share with you? We did some pretty good, so the income tax rate was lower. And then there is some good property tax exemptions for senior citizens that we've always had, but we raised the threshold, we almost doubled it. And it's based on income. It used to be like 29,000, which is nothing. One person might make that much on Social Security, but so we raised that to almost 50,000 for property tax relief based on income. There's three of them. There's the one that elderly homeowner credit, property tax assistance program, and the disabled American vets exemption for property tax guys. We raised all the those are old. They're not new programs, but we raised the threshold so more people would qualify for that. And those numbers hadn't been adjusted in quite a while with inflation and cost of living. I mean, this year, to me, cost of living is such a big deal. Anything the government can do to help people, and that means taxes. The cost of living is bad enough. Price of groceries still high. Price of gas is getting higher. So you got to keep spending down, keep our taxes down. But on the state level, that's the main thing we can do.
So what about data centers? Because I notice even without us having data centers plugging up our system, Northwest Energy, my bill compared to last year with less days, less power usage, cost me considerably more, almost 30% more.
Right.
So what's happening there, and what are we gonna do to make sure that we don't get stuck with data center energy costs?
It's a big issue. It's a big issue, and I've been studying a little bit, paying attention to it, and there's different sizes of data centers, like the ones under 20, I can't remember what the name of that usage is, but they don't use as much water or power. The ones over 50, whatever, the big data centers. I was looking at one state, I think it was maybe Texas. Texas already has like 300 data centers. But I'll tell you what, I mean, the way we all live on our phones now and communicate with email, and that the new AI technology, it's just a different way. I remember when the internet first came out, oh, this internet's crazy, it's taking us over. It's the same thing, it's different now. It's better, faster. And the fact that it's keeping that if you have any money in the stock market, those tech stocks are the ones that's keeping this economy going. So there's that, on the national economy, looking at it, there people are like, oh, can't put government regulations on this. It's private enterprises. But when it affects us with electric usage, that's definitely a deal.
And it doesn't bring that many jobs in the long term.
Right.
Building it and setting it up, sure.
Right.
But then that's a lot of
That's why,
automation.
like the unions, the AFL-CIO, because the Democrats are definitely dead set against it right off the bat. But the AFL-CIO, the unions, they lean Democrat most of the time. But they're telling them just last week, hey, Democrats, back off on this anti-data center until we know more about it, because they're looking at jobs. They're all about the construction jobs.
Well, a data center in St. Regis or Superior looks very different than a data center outside of Missoula.
Right.
Um,
That's exactly, you're exactly right there. Everything looks different for us compared to Missoula. That's the thing, in the legislature, every time I'm in a meeting or talking to, I've got legislators from eastern Montana, from Great Falls, from Billings, from Cold Strip, from Miles City, ranchers. I mean, their property taxes didn't go up in eastern Montana. Only in western Montana where the trees are, where the scenery's nice, where people from out of state moved after the pandemic. We're the ones that's property taxes went through the roof. Eastern Montana, they didn't. So they could care less what our problems are. So you're constantly, as a representative from here, I'm constantly telling those guys, hey, wait a minute. We're from this little corner of western Montana. We're hurting on paying our taxes. And another thing, I'm old enough to remember when we had 35 sawmills in Montana, and a pulp mill in Missoula, two plywood plants in Missoula. We've lost 3,500 jobs in the last 20 years in my life. I know every one of those guys. So back then in the 70s, Western Montana had all the money. We had all the we were generating revenue that the rest of the state was benefiting from. That's one thing I always remind those guys from Eastern Montana. Hey, wait a minute, now you guys have coal, you got gas, you got ag, which they've always had. And you guys wanted revenue from us back in the 70s, early 80s to fund the state. Now all of a sudden, we've got 5 sawmills left. We've lost our Superior Mill, our St. Regis Mill, our pulp mill in Frenchtown, just in the last 15 years. And we were booming in the 70s when I was young. Everybody had jobs. We had more young people around here. St. Regis, we had just an example of the economy in 1977. We had 7 softball teams in St. Regis. We had this big league. You can't even put together one now. That's how many young people don't live here anymore. There's no jobs. We got 1 million acres of Forest Service timber that's fallen down and burned up all around us. So that's one thing that I think, in my mind, that I'm good at. I'm good at being a representative who goes over there and say, hey, what about us? This is us over here. We're Montanans too. When it comes to the state, because that's the problem with state law. If you pass a law that says the counties can do this or that, it goes statewide. It's against the law to say, we want a law for Middle County that's different than a law for Carbon County. Can't do that. State laws are statewide. So, but to share the wealth a little bit, Eastern Montana, that's where I'm at when I talk to those guys. And after last session, they know who I am and they know where I live. They know where St. Regis. I always say my district is Frenchtown, Huson, 6 Mile, 9 Mile, Petty Creek, Lolo Creek, Alberton, Tarkio, Superior, St. Regis, Hagen, DeBorgia, Salties, and Paradise, Montana. Tell them that every time. It's my district. 11,500 people in my district. In Mineral County, we've got just over 5,000, I think. Because each state, there's 100 districts in the state, and it's divided by population. So we just hit over 1 million just not too long ago. So 100 times 11,000 is 1,100,000, whatever. That's how many legislators, we have 100 legislative districts in the House, and there's 50 in the Senate, so they basically take 2 House districts as 1 Senate district.
What do you have to do then, Kurt, to convince them that this area is important?
Oh, they hear it. They're pretty good, especially my party. The Republicans are down. They know the timber business. But you got to keep reminding them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, like the folks wanted to sell their logs, but it cost so much to ship it that they didn't hardly make nothing, so they didn't do it.
Right.
Is there anything that you are planning on working on, or is there a committee you're going to go to?
Well, I'm going to try again for the Fish and Game Committee, and maybe the Natural Resources.
Is there state land that we can get opened up and get people working out here in Mineral County?
Yeah, Well, there is, I mean, we've got, the best thing going right now is the Good Neighbor Authority. That's a deal, it's a partnership, and the DNRC partners with the Forest Service, because 89% of all of our land in Mineral County is national forest. So if there's some timber right up here that's dead and dying right next to private property, we can use that. It's a program called the GNA, Good Neighbor Authority. And the state DNRC goes in and sets up the timber sale, and the Forest Service has to agree with it. That agreement came through Congress, the National Congress. And right now, there's some really good projects, and you'll see them, like when you go down to St. Regis, up on the Beacon Hill, all that that was a Good Neighbor one, and then on the way to Superior, across the river, you see all that new logging across behind the church ranch, now it's Good Neighbor Authority. So it's working good, it's a really good program, and that needs to keep going. There's a lot of loggers working, but the problem is, all the logs are going to Coeur d'Alene, IFG. When IFG shut our mill down, they still have 7 sawmills in Idaho. Moye, Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, Lewiston, Grangeville, and what's the other one? Lewiston, Grangeville, Moye, Chilco, Sandpoint's the other little one. But all the logs are going to that. But our Montana loggers are working. Not all of them. Some of them are, but not as many, like, can I say that they're used to. Back in the 80s, we had hundreds.
Overhead's a lot when you have to drive that far over
Right,
the
the
logs.
trucking kills the profit for the logger. The truckers make a little bit of money, and that it costs a truck, and I can't imagine now. When I was 18, I bought my first log truck in St. Regis. Bought a 1956 Mack B model, the old round cab log truck for $5,000 from Sparky Moore. And I wanted to go to college in Missoula, but I didn't have any money. So I bought this log truck, paid it off in one summer. I paid off that $5,000, and I still had enough money to pay for my first quarter at the University of Montana myself. And then I came back, because I didn't like being broke. I was broke as soon as I got the first day at college. I was broke. I didn't like that. I knew how much money I could make in the woods. So I came right back to St. Regis that next year. I quit college. I didn't do that. I went to work. Bought a little jammer. Sold a log truck. Then I went to work for Diamond. And a million different jobs. Mostly in the woods, but I built houses. We did. The sawmill shut down. The timber industry is always tough. Depends on the interest rates. And then in 1980 something, remember when the interest rates were 17%? You guys remember that? 18%. They think it's tough now, it's 6-7%. That's right, when I was like 30 years old and thinking about buying a house, 18% interest. So the lumber market just went, Diamond Mill shut down. A few years later, they got back going again. But, so we were building houses, and the freeway was coming through here. A lot of us worked on this I-90. There was a lot of jobs for quite a few years. The power line came through here. You guys remember that?
I worked on the
Yeah,
power
everybody
line.
worked on the power line. Those were big jobs. But you did whatever you could to want to live here, because I made up my mind a long time ago. This is where I would stay. I fish, I hunt here. Got my kids in school there. I'm going to stay here, whatever it took. Feast or famine. Most of the time you were broke, but you did whatever you could to stay here. Well, what do you think, you guys? Got any more questions about anything big? She asked, what am I working on? But that Good Neighbor Authority, and then the DNRC, the DNRC Forestry Department does need, and there's help they need, and help that we can use those guys with they have a pretty good relationship with our local fire departments. Our local fire departments with their fire safe projects. You're pretty familiar, Julia, your experience with all those things. Those things need help.
We always need
Visited with
anything we can get up
the
here.
Frenchtown Fire is a pretty big outfit. They're in Missoula County, but they go all the way to Alberton into Mineral County and down to Penny Creek. And the fire chief, pretty sharp guy, he lives up Penny Creek, just south of Alberton. His insurance got canceled. the fire chief of the Frenchtown Fire Department, his homeowner's insurance was canceled because, and they had done all the fire safe projects and mitigation for 10 acres around his place, but they came up with something about the road and the distance from the fire hall, and then there's the ratings of the fire departments have a rating, depending on how many men they have, how much training they have. I mean, there's stuff like that that homeowners really need help with this. I'm looking at some bills.
We
like-
passed on a house purchase in Betty Creek because of that insurance issue.
Yeah, and that affects your financing too, sometimes on homes. So for us rural people that want to live out here, there's got to be help for that. And the state can do something about that, like supporting our fire departments. I mean, we had one bill for a training deal, but it was a pretty expensive deal, and it was all about Butte wanting to build some giant fire training facility. And it didn't pass the floor, it was too much money just for one department. But to help, you know, you take our rural fire departments for granted, but they're pretty important when it comes down to being able to afford to live out here and have insurance and finance a house.
And have people willing to volunteer 24/7.
Yeah, that's
That's
the thing.
a lot of I think that is a lot of the problem on the west end.
We did just pass a deal, because you know, even these little volunteer firemen can get a retirement. And we raised the threshold on how much that, because there's a state fund that the state legislature has control of those funds, those retirement funds. They raised the threshold on that, so EMTs and,
As long as your department is in compliance with the state
right.
safety training required, yes.
We raise that money on those guys. And then there's always the options like St. Regis Fire, they'll sign up 2 of their trucks with the DNRC to be able to go out on a fire and get paid. The guys get paid, the truck gets paid, the money goes back to the local fire department. We gotta keep that going too. So.
Our department has done well in getting wildland fire training, and I believe they already did their research classes this year.
Through the DNRC.
Yeah, through that program.
And that's a pretty good, as far as statewide, they have the same deals, even in eastern Montana, in Miles City and Glendive, they get wildfire season too, it's brush fires, grass fires, it's different, but they have the same thing we do, so they help us in western Montana, when it comes to funding. So, anybody not registered to vote? Juliet got voter registration cards.
Remember, if you aren't registered to vote or you know somebody that's new that may need to register to vote, you need to do so by May 2nd, because the ballots go out on the 8th.
Yeah, but you can still register right up at the courthouse until voting day. In the courthouse.
Oh, in the courthouse? Okay.
There's been
If you want an absentee, you gotta do it by the 2nd.
Thank you.
Well, Debbie, it's not quite at 5 yet, but if there's any more questions, we got a big Easter dinner and go to. Thanks for coming down on Easter.
Thank you for
Thanks,
coming out,
Juliet.
Chris. I appreciate this. That's opportunity
Thanks
for
for
people
setting
to
this up, I appreciate it too.
have a discussion and not just a debate. So, thank you.